morning. Um, Reading Psalm 69, 19. You know my reproach, shame, and all my adversaries are before. Reproach has broken my heart, and I am so sick. And I looked for sympathy, but there was none. And for comforters I found, but I found none. They also gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst, vinegar. May their table come, and when they are in, may it become. May their eyes grow dim, so that they cannot see, and make their loins shake. Pour out your indignation and your burning anger overtake. May their camp be desolate. May none dwell in it. For they have persecuted him you yourself have smitten, and they disdain those who add iniquity to their iniquity. And may they not may they be bottled out of. May they not be. But I am and in. May your salvation set me secure. I will praise the name of God and magnify him, and it will please the Lord better than an ox, or a young bull. The humble have seen it. You who seek God, let your heart reverence, for the Lord hears not despise. Let heaven, earth, the seas, everything that moves in. For God will save Zion, build the city. They will make dwell there. The descendants of his servants will inherit it. Those
letter of Paul to the include us, hurt us. Word redeemed. Use much. Doing something. Cross of
honor to follow him. He is a great horror. Follow him tonight as well. He is one of the he's one of the best balances, professor, preacher, practitioner of anybody I know. I'm so glad that he came to join us tonight. Thank you, Mark. Before I begin, let me say a word on behalf of my dad and our family. Thank you. Thank you for loving him. Thank you for listening to him. Thank you for bringing such joy into his life. This week of the year was always one of his favorite weeks of the year. And as I drove here, I realized today, as I passed milestones along the way, that I will never do again what I did for the last 4.5 decades of my life every year. Come to this place, sit in the audience, and listen to my dad preach, think in my heart and mind, that's my dad. But I will hear him again someday, and I suspect some of the first words that I will hear is that he will bring up some of the things that we disagreed with on this earth, and he will say, turns out I was right. He always said, you could disagree with me, you have a right to be wrong. Indeed, it's true. He leaves a message for you tonight and a message for all of us. You knew him as a preacher, as a teacher, as a debater, as a student, but there's only so much room on a tombstone. And there's just a couple of lines there from a famous old hymn. It is the message he leaves with all of us tonight. I need no other argument. I need no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died, that he ransomed me. It's enough for all of us tonight. I thank God, George L. Fall, for the privilege of being his. I hear voices. I hear voices. Elijah did. He had his best day ever. He completely and totally annihilated 450 false prophets of Baal in every way possible. It was his best day. It was the definition of a best day. But Elijah was hearing voices. And his best day ever quickly became his worst day. 1 Kings 19, verse 1, now Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. And then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and even more if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. Elijah was afraid. He arose and he ran for his life, and he came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. But he himself went about a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree. He requested for himself that he might die. He said, it is enough, O Lord. Take my life from me, for I am not better than my father. Okay, Elijah, let me get this straight. You just survived a 3-year, all-points bulletin, price on your head, no holds barred, kingdom-wide search. You just decisively decimated Baal's priests, and you won the contest of the ages. You just saw direct evidence of the power and fire of God at your request when you called it down. You convinced the people that God was God. You just had one of the most miraculous prayer life experiences in the entire Bible. You just saw the land quenched with rain after over 3 years of drought. You just sent your arch enemy, King Ahab, running with his tail between his legs back to that painted up witch of a wife he had named Jezebel. You just won an incredible 17-mile foot race against Ahab and his chariots. You just watched God keep specific promises. And today, your leadership and prophetic authenticity were unquestionably vindicated, credentialed, and validated. You just had your best day. You waved the white flag, ready to give up. In fact, you're so low, better off dead. Or should we give him a break? Let's try to give him a break. This is just about Jezebel. This was the cumulative effect of years of ministry, service, burdens, observation, grief, the harsh realities of life, living life on the run, looking over his shoulder, trying to do the right thing, being a conduit of God's power. He was exhausted. He's scared. He's stressed. He's cynical. He's wrung out. He's spent. He's vulnerable. He was the great prophet of God, but James says he's also a man with a nature like ours. I heard recently a song called No Fight Left. That's where Elijah was. No fight left. At least not emotionally. Jesus was walking through the crowd one day, and a woman with a lifelong illness saw him. She thought, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be well. So she made her way through the crowd, and she touched his cloak. But Jesus said something interesting. Jesus said, who is the one that touched me? While they were all denying it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding. They're pressing in on you. You say, who touched me? But Jesus said, someone did touch me. I was aware or gone out of me. When you're serving, it takes something out of you. Jesus handled it perfectly, but Elijah isn't Jesus. Neither are you, and neither am I. I wonder if I'm talking to anybody tonight who suffers from exhaustion, discouragement, depression, anxiety, and even feel guilty because, like Elijah, it's cumulative and it doesn't make sense, and there might not even seem to be any objective reason for it, but even if there is, you think you shouldn't feel that way anyway. It happens even to spiritual people. It happens often after great moments. Satan tried to tempt Jesus after his baptism. Sometimes it's situational. More often it's internal. It doesn't even always have to make sense. I don't know if you've noticed, but what I've noticed is dropping like flies. Tapping out. Throwing in the towel. They're quitting their jobs. They're leaving the church. They're walking away. They're isolating themselves. They're just done. Those of us that remain explain it away with generalized statements. Oh, why work when you make more by staying home? Or, oh, they just got out of the church habit. Or shows they were never committed in the first place. And though there may be elements in truth in those statements, I believe there are other reasons. People are stressed, they're tired, they're discouraged, lost hope. And I hear voices. Elijah heard four voices. The first voice is Jezebel's voice. Actually, it's her messenger's voice. In reality, it's Satan's voice. Verse 2, Jezebel sent a message to the messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and even more if I don't make your life as the life of one by tomorrow about this time. Jezebel terrified him with tools of intimidation, insecurity, inadequacy, shame, terror, weariness. I once heard a preacher suggest that Elijah should have addressed Jezebel more like he did Ahab. If he had, the verse would sound something like this. Elijah would have said to the messengers, you go back and tell Jezebel for me. You say, Jez, get out of my face. I've defeated the prophets of Baal and called down fire. Do you think a wrinkled up old hag like you scares me? Get behind me, servant of Satan. But no. One simple sentence, Jezebel, strikes terror in his heart, and the prophet of God, I hear voices. The next voice is Elijah's own voice. And you know, sometimes when you hear a voice, it's the most demoralizing voice of all. He himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, verse 4, and he came and he sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die. And he said, it's enough. It's enough now, O Lord, take my life. I'm not better than my fathers. Juniper tree, a broom tree, was used by desert travelers as a refuge from the sun. The root of the tree yields a hard charcoal, gives out heat. I'm told you could even chew it for nourishment as a last resort. So he sits under this broom tree like Jonah sat under his gourd and asks God to kill him. Preacher Jeff Walling calls this the prayer of Elijah. It's not the prayer of Jabez. It's the prayer of Elijah. It's hardly the kind of thing you'd put on a plaque or a wall. I'm a loser. I want to die. Listening to his own voice. Voices. The next voice is the voice of an angel. Verse 5. He lay down, slept under a juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him. He said to him, arise and eat. Looked, and behold, there was at his head a bread cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came again a second time, touched him, and said, rise and eat, because the journey is too great. There's some common practical remedies here: food and rest, action, purpose, and self-talk. I hear voices. Finally, there is the voice of God. Verse 8. So he arose and he ate and he drank and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights. Horeb, a mountain of God, and came to a cave there and he lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, what are you doing, Elijah? He said, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the sake of Israel covenant. They've torn down your altars and they've killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they took my life to. How can we stop here for a minute? Does anyone here recognize where Elijah is? Does anybody get a sacred sense of history or deja vu here? Mount Horeb? Ring any bells? The other name for Mount Sinai. It's the area where God spoke to Moses in the burning bush. It's where God's people had a run-in with idolatry. It's where instructions for the construction of the tabernacle were given. It's where Moses got the 10 Commandments. It's where Moses struck the rock to get water. It's where God showed Moses his glory and sheltered him in the cleft of the rock, and Moses had to cover his face. It may have been out in the middle of nowhere, but it was somewhere. One commentator says, all told, some 63 chapters of the Old Testament were dedicated to events that took place at Mount Sinai. That amounts to 14% of the 436 historical narrative chapters from Genesis to Esther. I hear voices. God spoke again. Verse 11, he said, go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord. Behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountains and rocks before the Lord. The Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, the sound of a gentle blowing, a whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle, and he went out and he stood. Behold, a voice came. What are you? That he had the last time. I'm the only one left. All the prophets with the Lord. Now they're trying to kill me too. See, the Lord was passing by. Wind so strong that it broke rocks, but he wasn't in the wind. An earthquake on the mountain, but he wasn't in the earthquake. And then a fire, but he wasn't in the fire. But after the fire, a still small voice, gentle whisper. Elijah was a fighter. He thrived on the sensational and the miraculous. He usually made a big splash. His voice was heard and known. I can't help but wonder if it's the same cleft of the rock God hid Moses. I hear voices. See, here's the deal. Satan sends you messages. You send yourself messages. God sends you messages. You keep receiving and replaying and processing the messages. I hear voices. God keeps speaking. In verse 15, the Lord said to him, go return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you've arrived, you shall anoint Hazael, king of Aram, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you shall anoint king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, you shall anoint as prophet in your place. It shall come about that the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall put to death. And the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu, Elisha shall put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not. I hear voices. I want to make sure tonight that we hear the messages from these voices. Here's the first one for you tonight. You are not done. I don't know how tired or exhausted some of you are tonight, but you are not done. Your wound is not mortal. I met him recently, 19-year-old boy, Kevin Hines, one of over 2,000 people who have made the suicide leap off the Golden Gate Bridge. He's also one of only 26 people who survived the jump. And his story is a powerful testimony because he says the same thing that 18 of the other survivors have said in one way or another. He said that the millisecond after he launched himself over the rail, that in that instant he felt total regret. In fact, he said, my first thought was, I don't want to die. God, help me. And in that fleeting moment, as his body plunged at 75 miles an hour, 25 stories toward the water, he realized that nobody would ever know that at the last minute he had changed his mind. Since recovering from his injuries and dealing with his issues, his life has become much more rich. You are so not done. Fear is a liar. More than ever in my life in these past several years, I have wanted to be done. I am so not done. You are so not done. Number two, you are not alone. By the way, it's not just about you. 2 or 3 times Elijah repeats his dilemma. And God said there's 7,000 other people that haven't kissed Baal or bowed the knee to him. You know the guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, Kevin Hines? He said, I thought nobody cared, but then I realized that lots of people are so not alone. But God not only shows Elijah, you're so not done and you're so not alone, shows him the third word here, you are not going to believe what I will do. If we read it from the redneck version, we'd say, you ain't seen nothing yet. I will use the enemy Hazael to accomplish my will. I'll use a crazy chariot driver named Jehu to finish off Jezebel. I will provide a successor for you, Elisha, to continue your work with the school of the prophets. I'll use 7,000 other people who are still faithful to me. And you might think that word to Elijah, it doesn't get any better than that. You want to bet? God's saying, you will so not believe what I can do. Would you imagine with me for a moment tonight what Elijah would have missed if he had gotten his wish, I want to die? You remember how he did go? How his Old Testament career ended? 2 Kings 2, verse 11, they were going along and talking. Behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire that separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. You say, well, it doesn't get any better than that. You want to bet? 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and brought them up on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them, and his garments became radiant and exceedingly white, as no launderer on earth can whiten them. And Elijah appeared to them along with Moses. They were talking. Now, just a little side note here. God sent Elijah back to the wilderness of Damascus. Great apostle Paul, Saul of Tarsus, was stricken on the road to Damascus, and then he spent time with Jesus in the wilderness of Arabia. Galatians 4:25 says Mount Sinai is in Arabia. One writer makes this parallel. When Elijah saw himself as having failed, he ran off to Sinai in Arabia to give up. He was actually re-encouraged. Saul ran off to Sinai, maybe to give up his calling as a leader in the Jewish community, but he wound up being prepared to become a leader in the church. The same voice that assured Elijah invited Paul to discern his vocation far from the busy haunts. Imagine what Elijah would have missed if he had gotten his wish I want to die. Go back to you. You can't stay at the Juno. You got to go to Horeb. Stay at Horeb. You got to go to Damascus. You won't be at Damascus forever. Your chariot awaits, and later a transfiguration on the mountain with Moses. So what do you do now? Well, there's a couple lessons to be learned from. Number one, take. The angel said, "Arise and eat and seek help." Let me ask you something that I once heard someone ask in a sermon. He said, "Do you become holier and nicer, more encouraging and healthy and productive when you're tired?" There's a little acronym, HALT. H, hungry. A, angry. L, lonely. T, tired. There's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. Depression is not just a spiritual problem. In his book, The Struggle is Real, Michael Lyle says that in one clinical day, he saw symptoms of depression in different patients that were caused by diabetes, anemia, medication side effects, thyroid, sleep apnea, brain injury, vitamin D deficiency, and hormonal problem. In one clinical day. Our systems are interdependent, and to characterize all anxiety and depression as some sort of spiritual deficiency is physiologically and theologically inaccurate at best, and it's harsh and kind and destructive at worst. Just because you haven't felt it doesn't mean that the struggle is not real. And we have to take care of ourselves. At one point, Elijah just needed food and water and rest. Second, we prepare ourselves. Don't underestimate the journey. The angel said that the journey is too hard for you. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You know that passage of Scripture in the New Testament where Paul's talking about all the stuff that he went through, and he shipwrecked, and he was beaten, and he was stoned, and he was left for dead, and all those things that we like to read that he went through. But I think the biggest stuff he went through is in the next couple of verses. When he says, on top of that, I have all the internal pressure from the churches, and who's weak, who falls into sin without me feeling. In other words, the pressures with him were internal, they were spiritual, they were daily, they were exponential, they were personal, and they were intense. We can heal and cope, but it's not an instantaneous thing. God told Elijah, this is going to be a long journey. There's no quick fix, there's no easy answer, so we have to prepare ourselves for the journey. The third thing we have to do is understand ourselves. Twice, Elijah was asked, why are you here? Answer some hard questions. Identify the Jezebels in your life. To what and to who are you vulnerable? I have a list of 10 things that trigger my inadequacy. Ask yourself, what triggers this in your life? What sucks the life out of you? Make a list. Understand yourself. Position yourself. Go where you can hear the voice of God and listen. Music, solitude, prayer, Scripture, silence. And most of all, surrender yourself. Follow him wherever he leads. They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over but expecting a different result. You've heard that, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over but expecting a different result. And that's a famous statement for a reason, because it's true in many cases. But what if that same thing that you're doing over and over again is the right thing, the one that God commanded you to do? That's not a definition of insanity. That's the definition of endurance. When you keep telling the truth, even though you're ridiculed and rejected. When you keep asking for forgiveness, even when you sin. When you keep telling people about Jesus, even when they don't listen. When you do what God said, even if it makes you look out of touch. When you keep praying, even when the answer doesn't come. When you keep praising, even when the pain is still there. When you keep forgiving, even when the offender isn't repentant yet. When you keep believing, even when the doubts come in. When you keep the door open, even when the prodigal doesn't come home. When you keep loving and doing the right thing and staying in there and putting one foot in front of the other, that's not the definition of insanity. That is the definition of endurance. I never thought the day would come when I would quote Ross Perot from the pulpit, but here it is. Most people give up just about when they are to achieve success. Quit on the 1-yard line. Give up the last minute of the game, 1 foot from winning a touchdown. My friend Tom Burgess says the right thing. James says, blessed is the one who endures trials, because when he passes the test, he'll receive a crown of life that he's promised to those who love him. Endurance is one of the most important things to cultivate in 2020. Not time to give up. Not time to back off. It's not time to cower in fear. It's not time to lie down and die. It's not time for our concession speech. Not time to fold. Not time to head for the hills or hunker in the bunker. It's not time to hesitate and lie low. It's not time to be silent. It's not time to acquiesce or accommodate or compromise and capitulate. It's not time to dilute and water down or surrender. It's not time for retreat. It's not time to go into hiding. It is not time for the white flag. It is time for the kingdom banner to fly high. It is time for us to say, His grace covers me, His Spirit lives in me, His angels surround me, His power is infused in me, His love flows through me, His word's in me, His blessings on me, His promises are with me, His work is for me, His presence beside me, His hand is under me, holding me up. Why do we so often feel like giving up and letting go? Satan, stop messing with me. I won't let go. I want to let go, but I won't let go. There are battles to fight by day and night for God and the right, and I'll never let go. I want to let go, but I won't let go. I'm sick, it's true, worried and blue, worn through and through, but I won't let go. I want to let go, but I won't let go. I'll never yield. What? Lie down on the field and surrender my shield? No, I'll never let go. I want to let go, but I won't let go. This be my song mid legions of wrong. Oh God, keep me strong. I may never. Let me just ask you this. Feel like giving up? Would it be so easy to quit going? Tired? Overwhelmed? Like Lot, as your righteous soul vexed? Stay on your feet. Outcome better than you could ever imagine. 1 foot in front of the other. Keep moving toward the finish. You are still lean into the pain. Get back up if you're down. Call on Christ. Access the Spirit's reserve. Run to the Father. Get that second wind. Think of the cloud of witnesses. Consider Jesus. Lean on each other. Imagine the end and run your race. Don't give up. Pray with me. Father, I know there's some tired people. But if we have run with they've tired us out, what will we do? If we've been caught in what will happen? Lord, strengthen us, fill us with your grace, our hope.